So hello everybody, this is Bob Eve and I'm talking to you from Data Virtualization Day in New York City 2011, and I have the pleasure of having a chance to talk to a couple great folks from TechTarget. There's Wayne Eckerson, and from EMA, Shawn Rogers. Welcome guys.
Nice
Great to be here. Well, let me start off with a question. What did you think of Data Virtualization Day? How about you, Wayne?
I've loved it so far, and the thing I like most is that a composite put real customers up front to speak to us about the value of data virtualization, and they made a great case.
I've got to echo what Wayne said. I think one of the most valuable things for me being here the last 2 days, and thanks again, I got invited also to the Customer Advisory Council this week. So I got to sit in on some of the discussions from your customers and clients as they talked about the things that they love about your platform and gave advice for future changes. So that was very interesting to me, and of course the user stories were fantastic. Great names, Putnam and Bank of America and Qualcomm and Pfizer, and just the list kind of goes on and on, so it was good stuff to listen to.
Listening to these customers and kind of applying your analyst perspective, what were some of the insights that they provided that, as you think and synthesize, would be important to other companies?
Well, the thing that struck me that I've never really heard as much when I've investigated data virtualization is just the time to value and how data virtualization really speeds up your project by cutting a lot of time out. In fact, a lot of people mentioned how that now with data virtualization you can get the data much faster than the business can even absorb it in a prototyping session. Whereas before it would take weeks for you to get the data together and then present something to the business users for validation. Usually it'd be wrong, then you have to go back for another 6 weeks. Now we can consume data extremely fast, put it in front of users within a week or two, and get their feedback, and then reiterate again. So I think in many cases, your customers were saying it's reduced cycle time by half. Even if you didn't have all the data modeled in the tool, it didn't take that much effort to pull a new data source in, model it, and then grab it and show it to the users.
Well, how many times did you have it right the first time anyway?
Exactly. So, I mean, this is the whole big movement these days, is to do things faster, better, and cheaper. And faster is probably the most important one of those in that triad of functionality that business wants. And data is the slowest part, getting access to data. So this was really enlightening for me to see that this kind of tool set can accelerate projects, make people agile. This is even before you apply agile methodology. So we didn't talk that much about that today, but this is a natural complement to an agile development methodology.
Big insights for you?
You know, from my side, I think the market is turning towards data virtualization, and I think that's one of the big takeaways I have. I agree with Wayne. Agility was certainly a theme, even if it wasn't always titled that in the conversations. Speed to value was certainly important, but it was interesting to see how it was being applied to this sort of widening data world that we're dealing with right now. The data warehouse isn't the only spot that we're looking for information. We're looking at the cloud, we're looking at appliances, we're certainly looking at like the non-relational or NoSQL type environments like Hadoop. All of these things are important to the customers, and they're looking for easy ways to get access to the information, and data virtualization seems to be solving that problem for many of the people that were here.
Do you see data virtualization now as kind of coming of age and being something that everyone should be considering, or is it still very specialized and unique for only limited use cases? What do you guys think?
Well, for any data integration specialist, you do need multiple tools in the toolbox. There should never be just one, and certainly data virtualization should be there.
You know, Bob, earlier you and I were talking about adoption from some of your customers, and I think right now there's sort of a level of viral adoption happening. Many of the stories that I heard this week where we started with a pilot program, or we had a small niche or an area that we wanted to address, and it seems to be spreading for these folks. So I think my takeaway is that it's growing quickly, and I think the market is turning in your direction. There's a certain level of passion of adoption amongst the users, which I found rather refreshing that you don't see in every type of technology.
advances in hardware, memory, 64-bit operating systems, the size of the network pipes is making this technology, data virtualization, much more feasible, much more powerful. And so you can apply it to many more applications than you could in the past. I mean, basically you can address more data, do more calculations than you could. So I think its footprint in an organization is growing. And in fact, as I was talking to someone outside, you probably should start by virtualizing. There's so many benefits from extracting out your data, just like we abstract out storage and we abstract many other things in our architecture. Why not abstract the data? It just makes changing your architecture, changing your data sources much easier without impacting downstream applications. So start with virtualization and then persist if you need to for performance or what other reasons are to gain aggregate and historical data.
That's a good point. I think it brought out something that came across from multiple speakers, was the idea of really decoupling the business problem and providing the information to the business from the IT problems and the technical engineering challenges inherent in doing that business information modeling and delivery. Did you see the same thing that I saw from that kind of that split and a kind of a different way to think about it than might have been closely coupled in a warehouse type approach?
I certainly did, and I think it's one of the themes that I'm taking away as a value proposition around data virtualization is the separation of the two makes things not only more agile but more flexible, and I think that it's going to reduce time and effort when making changes within the data environment, and that became very clear. And I think some of the scenarios we're hearing are we had it on premise, we need to put it in the cloud now, but if I don't have it so closely tied together, I don't have to do as much work to make that transition. And I think that that's certainly one of the themes that I'm coming away with that I think the business will appreciate as well as the IT side.
What's interesting is I've seen a couple of customers talk about a 3-tiered layer of abstraction within your tool. Mm-hmm. And that mirrors what people are doing with physical warehouses. So in a warehousing architecture, you have a staging area where you dump the data in its raw form. And then you have a data warehousing layer where you put it maybe in a third normal form, do some basic integration, and then you model it in a data mart for presentation and delivery. So you do that same sort of thing in a data virtualization environment, but it's all virtual, it's not physical, so it costs a lot less and can be done more rapidly. So that the more layers of abstraction you have, the better off you're going to be. It just eases administration, improves change management so much. So we used to talk about 3-tier client server, right? Presentation, application, and data layers. You really need a layer of abstraction between each of those, and within each, it helps to have some layers of abstraction as well.
One of the things we've seen is that kind of modeling and that sort of thinking. It isn't necessarily where people start, because they'll pick some projects and get some wins. And what was it the guys from Qualcomm said? 24 projects in 24 months? Pretty incredible. But pretty quickly after they start to get that under their belt, they start to think more about modeling and think more about reuse across the different projects. And and one of the customers said 50% of his objects are now reused, and he's never seen anything close to that in any other kind of a situation. So I think we're going to pick up some reuse benefits as well as just the original agility by moving faster right from the start. Am I on point with that, or do you guys agree with that thinking as well?
I can see where reuse would be much greater in a virtual environment than, say, a traditional ETL data integration environment, for sure.
I also saw a theme which actually surprised me, which I heard your CTO talk about earlier today, is that you have a growing number of people that are using your platform to straight through query, that aren't so much worried about federating from 6 different sources. They're just interested in using the platform as a conduit for optimization. There was a bit of a joke in the room today about, given a choice, I'd rather have it go that way. At least I know the query is solid. So it was interesting to hear that even when they're not doing overly complicated things, some of your customers are finding good value in just straight through query through the platform.
We've always stovepiped our semantic layers with our BI tools. So if you change a BI tool, well, then you have to rebuild your semantic layer by putting in a universal data virtualization layer. you virtualize the BI tools as well as the data. So now I can change my BI tool and it doesn't affect my data or my semantic layer. So that's an added benefit that I haven't heard talked about much.
Pfizer and Qualcomm today talked about those kind of situations where they've really freed up the business users to use whatever top-level visualization tool they want because they've got the consistency in the data. One final question. Glad you came this year. Would you come back next year, and would you recommend that to other folks who are considering data virtualization?
I'd come back because I think you've got some leading edge thinkers here who are using your product to do some interesting advanced things. So I like to talk to those folks.
I as well. I appreciated the invitation. It was time well spent this week and certainly would look forward to coming back, although I think next year you're going to need a larger venue. You had standing room only this morning, so good luck finding that.
Well, consider this your invitation to come to Data Virtualization Day in 2012. Thank you.